What's going on, everybody? This is Phil here again. Another great episode of GLE. Got an awesome guest today. This individual spent a little over half a decade in banking before becoming the managing partner at Affinity Wealth Management Group and Affinity Insurance Partners. He's passionate about leadership, so we definitely have geeked out over leadership a time or two, and I'm thrilled to have him on the show. He's my friend, Scott Somma. Scott, welcome to GLE, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Phil. It's great to finally do this.
Yeah, man, long overdue. We've been talking about it for a while. So before we get into the meat and all the fun stuff, let's hear a bit about your background and how you became the managing partner of Affinity Wealth Management, Affinity Insurance Partners.
Yeah, so I got my financial career started at Quicken Loans a long time ago. I think I was there in 2002. I went to work for them and then did mortgages for, up until about 2009. And actually came out here to Pittsburgh on vacation to kind of clear my head. I knew I wanted to take my career into a different path. So my brother lived out here at the time, and I called him up and I was like, hey, I'm coming out for I think I was coming out here for 8-9 days. Clear my head, figure out what I wanted to do. Mortgages were great, but I was basically a one-trick pony. I was helping people out with one aspect of their life, and I wanted to help more. So I had a lot of friends and family out here as well. So a buddy of mine says, hey, listen, he knew I was coming out. And he goes, bring a suit. I want you to talk to somebody. So he set me up with an interview. I didn't have a whole lot of high hopes for it, but whatever, I never pass up an opportunity. Right. So I came in, I interviewed at a pretty large regional bank, and they interviewed me and it wasn't all that promising at first, what they wanted me to do. So I went about my vacation, actually looked around the Pittsburgh area for jobs, didn't really apply for anything. But cleared my head, did what I had to do. And on my way back home, I got a phone call from the bank and they said, we're sorry, we interviewed you. We didn't realize what your experience was. And they actually offered me a job managing branches of their bank out here. Right. So I ended up taking the job. Seemed like a good way for me to kind of learn different aspects of finance, whether it was, banking in general, and then business banking and investments and cash management systems and all that. So I did that, ran some branches out here in Pittsburgh, and I kind of bounced around. I would kind of get the sales force going, and then we would hit our goals, exceed our goals, and then they'd ship me off to another branch, and I kind of did that for a while. And then one day I'm sitting in my office and this guy, John, who is a friend of mine to this day, actually shows up and he pulls me in the office. He's like, what would you think about doing investments? I've kind of heard you talk. You seem knowledgeable in this. And I said, you know what? It was actually, investments were something that if you asked me when I was in my 20s, I'd tell you absolutely not. I'm not interested. Now, I've always been interested in the market and all that. It just wasn't a job that I thought that I would be good at. Or take it to the level I'd be good at it.
Sure.
But now as I was at the bank and I started learning more, he kind of hit me at the right time. I was like, you know what, I can do this. Because when you're in your 20s, it's like, wow, you're handling all this money and it's a big responsibility. Yeah. I'm not mature enough to do that yet. Right. Right. So, right. So anyway, I ended up taking the job, long story short. And I worked as they called it a premier relationship manager. So essentially I worked with the high net worth customers of the bank to facilitate investments and some other things as well. And it got to the point where I just didn't need the bank anymore. I just wanted to create my own culture. I didn't agree with the way they did things. And it was just time. Look, the bank gave me a platform to be able to take the next step in my career. The way they operated was not parallel to my belief system and the way I would do it. Sure. So I decided that I'll go do that. I don't need them anymore. Thank you for the 9-year career, but I'm going to go off here and I'm going to try to build something on my own where I can instill the values and the the core values and the belief system that I believe in. And I left with partners who had the same vision. So it wasn't just me, I left with two other guys. We've since split with one of them. He went his separate way, and I stayed with Derek. And we're coming up on 4 years independent. We've got about 17 employees now, directly and indirectly. We're rapidly growing, and it was a phenomenal leap. It was a scary leap, when you're responsible for bringing in, the revenue.
What was that like, man? I mean, what was your financial situation like at the time? Like, were you in a good spot when you left? And
I was in a good spot. I was climbing. I was doing well. Now, here's the thing. I never wanted to go upper management. Sure. And they knew that. Yeah. My thing was I like personal production. I like working with people. So they knew that. So they never came to me for the promotions. Now, what they would do is they'd have me mentor the new people that would come in and have me train them, teach them how to do, the job properly.
Right.
But I was good. I wasn't killing. I wasn't murdering it. I wasn't making seven figures or anything like that. But I was bringing in large clients, and I was, Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh for this bank was, this bank was in 13 states. There's Boston,
sure,
and, just larger cities, and Pittsburgh was not really on the radar. And not to give myself too much clout for this, but I mean, I took over the whole downtown market, and and with help with other people, it wasn't just me, but we made a lot of noise, and we started bringing in a lot of assets, and really starting to put Pittsburgh on the map as far as the bank was as a whole.
Sure.
On the investment side. And
how'd you like banking?
So here's what I'd say. It taught me a lot. So a bank is great because it forks in multiple different areas. You start at the bank here, but there's investments, there's lending, there's business banking, there's obviously compliance, there's operations. So in a bank, to get a start, you're not going to make a lot of money, but what you will do is get exposed to a lot of different avenues that you could take your career.
Sure.
And you don't need a degree to go to a bank. As long as you're competent somehow, and they'll give you a job. Wow. But it's up to you to make the most of it, and then realize what your strong suit. And some people want to be branch managers and just run branches. That's great. Some people kind of venture off into one of those forks, and they kind of find their niche. But I enjoyed it because I learned a lot, and which allowed me to point what I was going to be when I grew up into that direction. Right. Cool. I liked it. I met a lot of people. There's still people I talk to this day. It was great. The only issue that I have was it's corporate. And you're asked to do things that you normally don't really want to do, or they basically has like a one size fits all model. This is the way that we want everybody to do it. Well, that didn't fit my personality. I can't read a book and then go apply what I read. I'm more of I need to witness. I need to watch you do it. I need to learn from other people. That's how I learn faster. And they wanted to run everything off of fear of numbers. They wanted me to pull people in every day and go, you're either below your goals or you're not doing enough because here's your numbers. You should be ashamed of yourself, and I'll go out and do better. That's not the way I did things. And actually the way I did things was leading by example. And I've shown you the picture of my favorite picture of there's a boss and a leader. What's a boss and what's a leader? A boss is a guy, it's the gladiators in the cart. The gladiators are pulling the cart with the boss behind it. And then a leader is the leader is in front of the gladiators helping pull that cart. Right.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in leading from the front for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I give the Braveheart example. There's the general is behind the thing, he's shouting at his troops to go do this, that. Well, William Wallace is standing in front of all his troops, leading them into battle. So that's how I like to do things, but the bank didn't want me to do it that way.
I had a very successful entrepreneur once tell me, I don't deal with banks. I deal with bankers. And what he meant was, I don't just like go to banks. I find individual people, bankers, and that I want to work with and work with them. Have you ever heard something like that? And what would you say about that advice?
I mean, a baker can mean so many different things. I mean, it's not like we had a lot of pull.
Yeah.
When you go to a banker, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. A long time ago, when you had a good relationship with a banker, you could get special favors. They'd approve you for loans themselves. Mm-hmm. They would, maybe give you a little bit more of an interest rate on your CD or money market. Nowadays, there's no wiggle room for that stuff. So having a relationship with and I'm sorry for all the bankers that are listening out there, but they know what I'm talking about. I may be able to move the needle a little bit, but there's no decision making going on. It's a black and white thing, no matter which banker you talk to. Now, what you could do is have special favors done. Like if you need an account set up, mm-hmm. Sometimes you're supposed to be there physically. Well, if I know you, I'll just take care of it for you. I'll send you the signature page. You can sign and get it back to me. Right. Is it a no in the bank? Yeah, they don't like when you do that, but you have a few $1 million with this bank. I don't want to risk that relationship. So I won't break the rules, but I'll bend them a little bit more for you. Right.
Yeah. Let's go down that path. Cause I think that's such an interesting concept. And when we met, that's one of the first things we talked about was how, there's certain financial tools, potentially vehicles that, the regular Joe who might not be a high net worth individual might not even know about, just because, maybe they don't even have an opportunity to leverage those tools because they don't have the capital or the assets to actually be able to leverage those tools. So I'm curious from your perspective, are there certain tools, one for the regular Joes that they might commonly be overlooking or neglecting, or, when you see someone like me or a regular Joe come up, never met before, what's missing from a regular Joe's portfolio typically?
So that's a great question. I'll tackle one part. There are few products out there where there are net worth requirements. There's minimum investment requirements, right? So, especially in private placement, they could say if nothing less than $50,000. Well, if you don't have it, you can't do it. That's just a numbers thing, right? Or you have to have a $5 million net worth on a PFS to even for us to be able to do that for you, right? But there's a handful of those out there. As far as general investments, it's open architecture. Everything's available to anybody. It's just a matter of the scale, right? So how much, first of all, you want to get involved with somebody so we're a hybrid firm. We handle investments and then we handle insurance too. I don't think that all your money should go into just stocks, bonds, and cash. But I also don't believe that a solution to your life is life insurance. I think that there's a hybrid there, right? And there's a much longer conversation about why, which that could be for another conversation. But essentially, my job is to say, okay, here's your needs and goals. Here's what you want your future to look like. Here's what you feel about taxes. Here's where your trajectory of your professional career is going. You have a family. Do you not have a family? Right. There's all these components that we got to put together. Again, it's not a cookie cutter answer. Right. So what I have to do is say, okay, after you pay your bills, after you fund your 401k, which you should do. Now we can debate on how much you put in your 401k, but after that's all said and done, and you want to plan for the future, there's how much disposable income on a monthly basis or even on an annual basis do I have to work with here? And then I have to take that number and facilitate a plan. So how much life insurance do you actually need, right? How many kids do you have? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind to your kids? Sure. And then what are your future plans for life after retirement? Do you want to buy a vacation home? And there's a lot of things that come into play with that. Like, do you have a pension waiting for you? Like a teacher, for instance. those teacher pensions are fantastic, right? So do they really got to tuck as much money away as guys like you and I? Not really, because when they go to retire, they're gonna be their monthly pension's gonna be. I mean, some of them make more money when they retire than they do while they're working.
Oh, wow.
Pension, right? So, but anyways, to answer your question, there are a lot of things available to folks out there. It's just a matter of, does your advisor know about them? One. And two, are they able to facilitate it? Because if you're a guy that's working with an insurance guy and he doesn't have a securities license, then he's going to shove life insurance down your throat all day long, because that's the only thing he can give you.
Right. This is a concept that I think many people miss. Yes. Right. It's like going to a butcher as for your financial advisor. It's like, hey, I'm going to a butcher. What's he going to serve me? Well, he's going to serve me meat. He's a butcher. Right. Or you can go to a supermarket, or, you can go to a farmer's market or whatever, and you can pick from the whole menu of all sorts of things to cook dinner. Right. You're not just going to get meat. And I think people, like, at least I was ignorant to this early on in my life, in my teens and 20s. Like, I didn't realize that there was all these other things out there. Right.
Right. Well, and there's another thing too, Phil, is not only have the products on the insurance side and security side grown and matured and developed and just advanced over time, it's up to your advisor to constantly talk to you every year and say, okay, here's what you have going on right now, which was great 2 years ago. But guess what? This new thing came up, because these companies, insurance companies, mutual fund companies, whatever, they're battling for your business. So I'm gonna do this. Well, if you do this, then the other companies eventually will pretty much get there. So how do you separate yourself? How they separate themselves from each other? They're constantly evolving their products. So I can't tell you how many people they'd say, well, I set this up 10 years ago. You know what's happened in the last 10 years, right? Look at cars, TVs, cell phone, things advance over time. Investment instruments are no different than a TV or a car or a cell phone or whatever. They evolve over time. And if your advisor is talking to you at least once a year, if not 12, like we like to talk to people at least 4 or 5 times a year, just to make sure that they're okay. Do reviews. Hey, listen, this is a new thing. We set this up 4 years ago, but it just advanced. We can move it into it. I think we should upgrade into this product.
Sure.
Oh, okay. So now you're evolving with the time, instead of being in some stale product that's years and years old. And a lot of times you'll find that things that you used to have to pay for within these, especially in insurance, now come essentially free, or you don't have to pay for it up front unless you need it with your policy. For instance, long-term care and disability. Mm-hmm. You used to have to pay for that rider right when you bought it. Now, almost every insurance company gives it to you free. You only pay for it if you have to use it eventually, right? If you never have to use it, you have to pay for it, right? So, yes, there's a lot of things available. And when it comes to general investments and planning, almost everything's available to everybody. It's just a matter of how much money are you willing to put into it.
Sure.
To achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve.
So if you're out there listening, like I was when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I don't care how old you are, maybe you don't even have a financial advisor, right? You need to get one. If you want to reach out to Scott, affinitywealthmg.com is his website. You can find him on LinkedIn. They are doing some pretty cool things. They've got some cool tools and tricks, and I've learned a couple from Scott myself. So, if you don't have one, it's worth a conversation to just make sure you are leveraging all of the tools, because it's not one size fits all. Nothing's a one size fits all solution. Like if someone's trying to just sell you that this or that or one thing like life insurance or like stocks or like mutual funds is the be all end all. This is what you need to be doing, or just put money, just max out your 401k. That's it. That's not it. You're missing out on huge opportunities. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, consultations don't cost you anything. I'm not an attorney. I don't do billable hours. I want to help as many people as I possibly can. So we can have multiple dialogues until you trust me, feel comfortable, what have you. But if anybody wants help, I'll talk to anybody that wants my help. And again, we don't charge for time. My goal is to get you as a client. And once you become a client, then I owe it to you to have as much conversation as you'd like to have. Get to know your family, get to know, keep in mind, when folks have kids and everything, if the folks were to pass away, we become the next most important person in their kid's life because we know where the money's at. So building a relationship with clients is just as important as doing the right thing with your money and making sure that it's there when you go to retire.
That's a huge one that I haven't thought about that until recently because I was just thinking about like, hey, I do all this stuff. Like, does my wife even know? Like, if something happened to me, like, would she even know that I had this? Would she even know who to call? Right? Yeah. Like that's a huge one that
it is.
Probably many haven't thought about.
That's just planning for the next generation. I mean, it's making sure that your kids are taken care of. And I'll tell you what, I mean, there's plenty, especially the much older generation, it took my mother about the better part of 2 years to settle her father's estate because he put money in about 13 different banks. It was spread out. There was now we diversify things. I can diversify things for you, but you called me and I'll tell you where it's all at. The days of going to all these institutions and spreading your money out, fine and good for now. But when you your family's going to have one heck of a time tracking all this down and finding it all. And hopefully they find it all.
Sure.
You can go on your state's treasury website and I'll tell you how many times that I've gone on, you can go on Michigan, the treasury site and go to lost property and you'll find inherited money that was supposed to be left to somebody and they couldn't find that person or the person died and nobody knew. They're just looking for the next of kin to claim it. Wow. I had a client that I found 500 shares of Heinz stock. And I told him, and all it did, we filled out a form online. He sent it in to the PA Treasury and he was able to, somebody left him his uncle or I can't remember. This is a long time ago.
That's crazy.
But yeah. So, just make sure you have your house in order, I guess is a big piece of advice. And, save your statements or maybe have some kind of central place where things are just in case something were to happen to you or, make sure your financial advisor knows where everything is. And that person should be able to just compartmentalize everything for you.
Right.
So if something were to happen to you, your family can go to you and that advisor can tell you where things are at.
This is something I posted about, Scott, just the other day. And it's something, honestly, I'm just starting to implement in my life. So, if you're not doing this, don't feel like I'm pointing the finger at you because I'm learning it myself. Like your house is a business. You got income and you got expenses. You got a balance sheet. You got to run it like a business. If you can't clean your house, you need to find you're just not. You're okay with your house being dirty all the time. No, if you can't do the dishes right, how are you going to run a successful company right?
Right.
Your house needs to be clean. So you need to figure out a way to do it. You need to budget for a cleaning person or you need to dedicate your time or whatever you got to do. Right. And again, I'm not perfect at this stuff, but this is mentality that I'm just learning that is just so important for people who want to be successful and do big, great things. You got to manage the small stuff well. And if you do well with little, you'll receive more.
Right. So, and you get that taken off your plate. It allows you to focus on your own professional career and family time and what's important to you, maybe it's not professional. Maybe it's spending more time with your kids, get your financials cleaned up or let somebody else hand it to them. But by the way, we're professionals, right? We're good at what we do. Mm-hmm. I'm not a schmo off the street, or anybody else in the business that likes their job and is good at what they do. We're pretty good at what we do. So to pay a fee, a small fee for us to facilitate for you and take that off your hands, it's going to allow you to spend more time with your family. It's going to allow you to spend more time concentrating on your career and your professional aspirations, right? There's plenty of people out there that want to do it themselves. And I'm not saying go ahead and do it if you want to.
Yeah.
But this is what we do for a living. This is what I wake up and this is my number one priority next to my family and my health.
Sure.
Let us take this off your hand and at least, if anything, try people like us out. If you don't like what we do, you can always back it off, right? I mean, Nobody's saying you're in it forever.
Yeah.
But have a good experience with a good financial advisor, and you'll see that as long as you trust this individual, trust being the optimal word, right? I mean, a lot of us are good at what we do, but there's some out there that either don't keep up with continuing education, or they do the business about just enough to get by, and then they go on 19 vacations for the year. Yeah, fine, good. I'm not saying that those people are bad, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying there's better ways of doing it, and you just want to find somebody. And I would highly recommend finding somebody, at least that somebody knows. Google financial. Work with somebody that somebody else has worked with, or somebody else knows, or you have somebody that vouches for you.
Sure.
Ask around, find people. Call Phil. He'll tell you.
There you go. You can call Phil and get his opinion. I'll connect you to some key people like Scott or some other people in my network that help me out too. And man, I tell you, it's so big. And again, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't cost you anything. Go try somebody out. Go get some advice. Go see if what you're doing makes sense, and build relationships with people. That's what it's all about. So, Scott, I'm curious with your experience in banking. You did mortgages, right, and quick loan stuff. What would you tell, if you could go back in time 20 years, knowing what you know now about investing, financial management, all this stuff, what would you do differently? What would be like the couple things you would tell yourself, like, Scott, you need to be doing this?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. So that's a double-edged sword for me. Well, here's what I would say. If I had to do my life all over again, and maybe you're asking a question a little bit differently, telling myself something, I guess I would tell myself, maybe investments are in your future, doing it. Just, try getting into it earlier. I know you hate it. Because remember, like I told you 20 years ago, I would have told you, hell no, absolutely not. I would never be a financial advisor. It's not my thing. Yeah. But
what would you do differently instead of maybe just tell yourself?
Well, see, now that's where the other side of the sword comes in is, who's to say that the career path I put myself through wouldn't have led me here, right? So I made mistakes. I tested different things. I did mortgages. I actually slightly dabbled in medical sales before I did mortgages, and that didn't last very long. Mm-hmm. So I dipped my toe into different things. I tried real estate development while I was out here. I still do it, but I don't own a lot of properties, but it's a labor intensive thing. So my thing is that here's what I would tell myself. Don't be afraid to try anything. Mm-hmm. Right. Don't pass up on a meeting. What's an hour meeting take? And that's kind of one of the things that I preach a lot of people is, what's an hour conversation going to hurt? Worst case scenario is you walk away and nothing happens. Best case scenario is something comes of it, and you may professionally, mentally, personally benefit from that. Now, case in point, I came out here on vacation and drove home with a job offer, right? That wasn't the plan. My buddy told me to bring a suit. I could have easily told him, no, that's what I'm coming out to do. But I was like, fine, whatever. And I walked away with a job in which gave me a platform to now own my own financial firm in an industry in which 20 years ago, I would have told you absolutely not. Right. So it's kind of funny how this has all come around. So I would tell people, I would tell myself, don't be afraid to make a leap. Don't turn down a meeting. Keep your eyes and ears open at all times. And just make sure you take care of yourself and take full advantage of any opportunity. If somebody wants to have a conversation with you, have the conversation. Worst case scenario, you walk away, you never talk to that person again.
Sure.
You never know what's going to happen, right?
That's such good advice, Scott. That's like $1,000,000,000 advice that I think people, they've heard some of the successfuls like the Warren Buffetts of the world, or, some of these people say, you got to be able to say no to things. And they're talking to, you got to put that in perspective, and you got to set that premise up right. And what they're talking about is making sure they protect their time so they can accomplish the things they want to accomplish. Now, your point here of saying yes to things that may, talking to Joe or whatever, or some stranger who approaches you may seem like a waste of time. Like it's not going to get you where you want to go. But to your point, if you meet somebody, they introduce you to some new concept that you've never heard before, teach you something new, it might change the trajectory of your entire life. Your trip, you got an interview, job offer, and now you're in Pittsburgh. Whole trajectory of your life changed, right? And
absolutely. I still learn. There is a banker that I used to, when talking about bankers, that was average at best. He wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't, it wasn't his thing. He ended up moving on to do other things. But what I learned, part of my value proposition, which is kind of long in my longer version, he was talking to a customer, and he said something, and out of all the people that I know, I was like, this guy's probably never going to teach me anything. Well, I pulled something from him, a very unlikely source, that I now put into my day-to-day, into my value proposition. Right. So my thing is again, learn people. You'll never know where you can learn things from. It could be something personal, mental,
sure.
A way of living your own personal life, right? Because I'm a firm believer that your personal life and your professional life, granted that they're separate, but they do interweave. So a good soul and a good mindset allows you to attack your professional career at its fullest potential, right?
Right.
So I try to take bits and pieces. Like, so when people ask me who my mentor is, do I have people I lean on? Yes. But everybody I've ever encountered, I listen, and there could be value there. I've created myself as pieces of other people that I said, wow, I really like the way that sounds, or I like the way that person carried themselves, or I like the tone of their voice in that particular presentation. Like, it doesn't matter what it is.
Sure.
I pull things from different people, and I've created myself from that.
Right.
I don't believe that there's any one person that's going to guide you in life. Right.
This has to be why we click so well, man. Because what GLE is all about, arming people with tools and mindset. And the way I think about that is exactly what you're describing, right? I'm taking pieces, the best pieces from everywhere, and I'm putting them in my toolbox here. So, not everybody, there's no one person that has a perfect mindset, right? They have a mindset to do what they're doing. And that might be really cool, right? But, you can take pieces of one mindset, pieces from another. I just love that. And it's like, it resonates so much with me, man. So it's probably why we click so well.
Oh yeah, man. Like I said, always keep your ear to the ground. You learn a lot from people that you just don't know, I'm constantly listening. I just like talking to people. Yeah. You never know what you're going to gain, learn, absorb from them.
It's a great mindset, man. Great mindset. So, you mentioned another really cool point I want to make sure the audience leaves with is, you mentioned if I could go back and do things over, well, who's to say I would, because I wouldn't have ended up where I am now with the mindset I have now and met the people I've met on this path. Right. And it's a big point about contentment, because I think especially in the social media world, everybody's comparing. We're always comparing, like, oh, look at that dude flying on some private jet, and everyone's comparing their life, right? And it's so important to know you are right where you need to be to get where you need to go. Right. So, don't ever get discouraged or down or get on that comparison train to other people. You're on your path and be content with it. You can want more. That's cool. Your path might be that you need to want more and pursue and achieve more. But, always be content with where you're at, but never stop being hungry for more.
Absolutely. So that's very well said. And I firmly believe that, what are your dreams and aspirations? I've worked with when I was at the bank. I can't tell you how many people would complain about how much money they made, but they never wanted to do anything more they never wanted to work any harder. Right. And they would literally tell me, I'm not doing that because that's not in my job description. Well, you know what? When we look for promotions, we're looking for people that do things outside of their job descriptions and proactively take that on. That's what I'm looking for to give a promotion. So when that time comes around, we just won't ask you, right? So, but then the same people that complain and bitch when they get a paycheck and it's not enough.
Right.
So, and maybe monetary value isn't enough. Maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe it's health. But if you don't work, you can have all the aspirations that you want. But if you are not willing to put in the work and the time and the effort, it's not going to magically show up unless you hit the lottery, I guess. I mean, but
and then the lottery winners go broke, right? They don't know what to do with it.
I knew one guy that didn't win the lottery, but I didn't know him. He was a client customer of the bank, and he won Deal or No Deal.
Oh, nice.
I can't remember how much he was, close to $100,000, and I think he blew through it relatively quickly. But back to your point is, when you work in the workforce and if you have aspirations to do bigger things and you're not going to get there in the current spot, you're free to go and leave, start your own venture, go work for another company. Maybe that industry is not good. Maybe, you could be great at sales, but maybe selling that particular item or service isn't in your wheelhouse. And when I was running branches, I had people get promoted underneath me, stayed in banking. I also got people that would take the next step in their career, but say, hey, listen, Scott, thank you for teaching me all this stuff. I really grew. But what I realized is banking just isn't for me. I want to go sell insurance, or I want to go sell whatever. I like sales. You help me grow, but banking's just not my thing. I want to go try this.
Sure.
And it kind of goes by to taking the leap, right? So being content with yourself is great. But if you have goals and aspirations of doing more, getting off your ass and putting in the work is what you need to do. It's not just going to show up.
Right. It's the hard truth.
And don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to go to your direct report and say, hey, listen, what do I got to do to take the next step?
Right.
Right. Or, what are you looking for in the next time that this opening is? What are you looking for in the next candidate? And there's nothing wrong with asking that question, right?
Sure.
Now, going back to leadership, if you find yourself in a position or a company where you're just not jiving well with the value system, there's only so much you can control, right? It's not your shop to run. And you and I have talked about this before. So you either leave or go start your own shop. It's a scary ass leap. I mean, it is. When you're the one responsible for generating the revenue. But here's also what I'll tell you. If you're going to do that, make sure it's doing something that you actually enjoy doing, right? Like a lot of people want to be financial advisors because they think financial advisors means I'm going to make a lot of money. You have to put in the time. You don't just get licensed and then the money just starts rolling in. That never happens.
Right.
So, but on a larger scale, make sure you like what you do and you genuinely care about what you do.
Sure.
And that's probably the biggest thing, because I had somebody that I worked with. They used to say, he used to tell a story about, like, for me, for instance, I hate painting, which means since I hate it, I'm also bad at it. I'm not that great of a painter. So
Right.
if you want your house painted, don't ask me.
Well, Gary Vee talks about this, right? His teachers in
Yeah.
school used to accuse him of being lazy. It's like, no, he's not lazy. He just doesn't care at all about your stupid school. It's not that he's lazy. He just wants to do other stuff.
Well,
So,
that's me, Phil.
Oh yeah, it's me too. It's everybody. That's everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't graduate college, and it's funny. This is actually funny you bring this up, because recently I came back to Detroit to see to see family, and I had told my wife, I said, "Hey, listen, I didn't graduate college, but I always 4-point in my business, my marketing, economics. I always did well in that stuff, but they made me take all this other crap that I was no longer interested in, and I barely even showed up.
Right.
So I'm home." And I'm going through a bin full of stuff that my mother kept, right? Just storage. And she kept a report card from college. And on the report card, it was a marketing and a business class. And I got a 4-point in both. And then it was like probably some kind of science class and whatever. I didn't even bother paying attention. And I got like a C- in both of those because I barely showed up nor cared. I did the bare minimum. I think I was carrying like a 2.45 GPA, but I said, listen, I wasn't okay. This is what I'm interested in. And I took it seriously and I did well. The rest of this stuff, I don't want to get into college degrees because I know college is important, right? But, find what you enjoy doing. You genuinely, like for me, it was helping people. Mm-hmm. So I just had to find something that I could do to help people. And that could have been a multitude of things. I just fell into investments, which I kind of followed the market anyway. I was always interested in that. I enjoyed business. I enjoyed finance. It made sense for me, right?
I think there's another gem of mindset in there too, Scott. And we hit on it, in our conversation briefly before this episode, is you need to leverage your strengths where you are today. And it may not seem, maybe you're in a situation where you're unhappy or whatever. You can impact the world and people, and it doesn't take some big thing. It's one conversation. Right. You can make a difference. You can figure out a way to fulfill the purpose that God has put you here for, right where you are today, because you're here for a reason. Right. And that doesn't mean don't aspire to other things. It just means you're here where you are today for a reason. So, you can do that. So don't think that you've got to make a change before you can make an impact, because you don't. You can make an impact right where you are. Right.
And it goes back to you asking, what if I had to go back and do it differently? Would I?
Yeah.
I don't know. How do I know that I would end up in this spot or better, maybe worse? I have no idea. Like, how did you fall into doing what you do now?
So I fell into GLE because partially I was working on my personal development plan. And one of the things I wanted to do was learn about leaderships, and I wanted to learn about business and be better business minded going into my early 30s. And so I reached out to a guy that he's a business mentor of mine and a leader mentor of mine, Tony Watley. He founded 365 Driven, who was just a friend of mine, right? And I wanted to support him. He was starting his private society. So I joined it and just started hanging out with a bunch of people that own businesses, because I didn't own a business. I didn't know anything about business. I worked for a big business, and I wanted to be better and add more value wherever I can, at my work, at anything I might want to start in the future, whatever. I didn't have a business idea, right? And I got in that group, and a podcast and is something I had thought about for a long time. And I met other podcasters that were doing it, and I learned how easy it was to do it. And I was like, shoot, I literally learned it on Saturday. I learned about an app, a free app called Anchor. It's a Spotify sponsored app.
Is that an official plug?
What's that? No, it's not an official plug. It's just, that's one that's out there that I use. And I'm telling you what, it was just it was the next day I recorded I grabbed my phone, I opened the app, I plugged in my little microphone that I bought, I recorded a trailer, and GLE was born. And many people who have started podcasts will tell me that's a terrible way to start a podcast, Phil. and hey, I'm learning. We're learning. We're growing. We're doing these things. That's what it's about. I mean, you're going to screw up. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to have all the answers. At some point, you got to go. And I think many people, it's the people that think that it has to be perfect, or all these people have it figured out. Once you realize nobody's got it figured out.
No,
nobody does.
No. And I think you hit on something too when you're surrounding yourself with people that are positive mindsets, successful in their own right. Now we can talk about what the different levels of success and what that actually means, but they're positive influences. And that was one thing, not that I have bad influence, but I'm very lucky in Pittsburgh here and friends back home to be surrounded by a lot of close friends of mine that are all successful in different areas in their own right. And we feed off each other quite a bit, and we all have families. So our paths in life are very similar, married, young kids, goal driven. And we actually have a chat that we set up that's specifically for successes in our career. Wow. Getting that positive reinforcement, or hey, I'm not to be braggadocious, but hey, this happened, today. Like even like coming on this podcast, I threw in there, hey, going on a podcast, nervous and excited at the same time, that kind of thing, and it was, yeah, you're gonna do great, go get it, all that kind of stuff, and it could be big, small, whatever, right?
Sure.
Close a big deal. Somebody will throw that in there or something like that. But it's surrounding yourself with people that help set the bar higher and higher and higher and higher, or at least you can feed off of their success and go, okay, wow, that's awesome. I just got a little bit bigger pep in my step today. I'm going to go right. Schedule 2 more appointments for next week. Anything that can come out of it. But again, the word holistic is, being as far as leadership and careers and all that, I think before any of that, you have to be your soul and you, how you are inside in your body and everything. You got to get that right.
Right.
You got to get the people around you. You can't have dead weight. You got to get rid of the dead weight and bring more positive people into your life. What motivates you? For me, it's my kids and my wife and my family. I gotta provide for them.
Another one of my mentors calls that what you're talking about. He calls it head and heart alignment. And I thought that was a great way to describe it. It's like, how do I get my head and my heart aligned? Because if you're out of alignment, it's like being out of alignment and you need to go to the chiropractor. Like your body can't function right. No. And your life can't function right if your head and your heart aren't aligned and you're constantly, being pushed down. Pitbull has this funny story he tells, like, I get a kick out of Pitbull, man. I had no clue, who that guy was. And he's got some real good mindset now. And that he's been so successful and done all this stuff in business and things. But Mr. Worldwide shares that there's all these people cheering for you, right? When you're a little kid, like you're learning how to walk. And he's like, man, it's so crazy. Everybody's trying to get you to walk and they want you to walk so bad, and you walk and they throw a big party and they're all happy for you. And then you grow up and you try to do something great and they're all like tearing you down. And it's just so fascinating, right? So, if you want to learn how to walk really quick, you're going to learn fast if you got a bunch of people helping you learn and cheering you on. But if you got a bunch of people tearing you down and holding you down and trying to keep you from walking, it's going to be hard to learn how to walk. It might take you a lot longer. You can still do it, but it might take you a lot longer.
Well, it's going to be even harder to get. I mean, I find a lot of people. I know people that they find it really hard to and I hate to say the word, get rid of those people out of your life, but you got a lifelong friend maybe, or somebody you know forever. And for whatever reason, they're holding you down because they make bad decisions and they're just not a good influence. Cutting that tie is tough, and it may seem selfish. Now, I mean, depending on what this person does, but I mean, if it's some pretty negative stuff and all that, I mean, there may come a point where you may have to say, being around you brings me down. And then it bleeds into everything you do, right? You take that to the office and you take that back home to your family. And it's just and it becomes a vicious cycle. And I just refuse to be around it anymore, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'll remove myself from a situation or an individual that is just like, wow, you're just negative all the time. I want nothing to do with you. Sure. I really don't. You're not helping me at all. The mindset that I've learned related to that is to just be very purposeful with your energy. Yeah. So you need to be aware that, hey, this individual, this relationship drains my energy. And you can know that because if you're around somebody like you, Scott, for me, I'm sitting here talking to you, guess what? My energy is actually like I'm actually getting in a better mood and I'm feeling better than before we even started talking. Right. So if you're around people that when you leave that conversation, you're in a worse mood and you're tired and you're drained, if you're trying to accomplish something great, you want to be around people that give you energy and make you feel good. So you just got to be purposeful of, okay, I know this person's going to drain my energy, so I'm going to limit my time with them. And I'm going to be very strategic about when I choose to spend time with them. So I'm not, taking myself off the rails and affecting myself getting where I need to go. Right. Absolutely. And tie that back into leadership, man. So, when you got a workforce underneath you. So back when I was at the bank, it was corrective action. They didn't hit their goals or they did this corrective action. I'm like, that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
My thing, I was big on, all right, you made as long as you made the effort, I'll put time into helping you. But if you quit on me, I'm not, I can't teach drive. You can't teach drive.
Oh yeah. No.
Right. You either got it or you don't. Right.
Sure.
So I would, when I had an employee that was struggling, but I knew they had it in them, it was never a negative. It was never, hey, look at your numbers here. You're on the verge of getting let go here. Because what's going to happen, right? They're going to be down. They're going to go home. They're going to take that back home to their family. And do you think they're going to wake up tomorrow and feel good about coming to work? No. They're going to be walking on eggshells, pins and needles. They're probably, it's going to come out in their performance at work. They're probably going to be a little bit more aggressive than they normally are, and maybe be too aggressive with somebody or doing the job and botch it up altogether. It doesn't do anything. Positive reinforcement, which I mean, everybody loves that term, but truly positive reinforcement. Say, listen, let's work on how you're going to get from A to B. And I never treated those people like I didn't even care about the numbers. Like I barely even looked at numbers. I knew where I was. My thing is how do I individually get each people to maximize their potential?
Yeah.
And I would work with each one of them and I would show them, again, going back to the boss and the leader. I would say, okay, listen, the next time we have to present to a potential customer, I'm going to do it. I want you to watch me. Right. And I would do it. And then they would pick things up. Okay. What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Do you want me to do that again for you? Yes or no? Okay. No, Scott, I think I got it. But can you sit off in the corner and listen? And, so that kind of thing.
You reminded me of a book, and it's a super valuable book. I've got people in my circle that say it's probably the most valuable book they've ever read. But if you lead teams of people, that advice you just shared about, praising in public, positive reinforcement, correcting in private, those concepts are so key. And this book, Bringing Out the Best in People, if you never heard of it or ever read it, it's so good, man. You gotta read it. It's really a worthwhile read. And if you're not implementing some of these strategies, then you're missing out on huge opportunities to really impact people. Absolutely.
And here's the thing too, when you treat people like that, it comes back around. It comes back around in their attitude, their performance. And by the way, if you're in a leadership position and people below you are getting promotions, now you look good, right?
Well, that's your job as a leader, right? To develop
here's the
other
thing, Phil.
leaders.
Yeah, and that's it. So, and again, just as an example, when I was at the bank, there were two branches that I took over that were in the bottom of their region, production wise. Okay, out of, let's just call it 14 branches in a particular region, the pits of the Western PA area, and very quickly, and not to be braggadocious, but to make a point, being this is a leadership podcast, and the first comment was, okay, what was the other person like? Oh, he would pound on us about this and that, and it was always negative. And okay, I said, listen, we're not going to do that here. I'm not writing anybody up. If you give me the effort, if you don't hit your numbers, we're going to work on it. And both of those branches, I eventually took them to the top of the region production wise. And one of them was in a pretty not so great area. Right.
Sure.
And we were competing with the branches downtown. And this is before I took over downtown. Right. And that's kind of how I made a name for myself at the bank. But the point is that same people, the staff, I didn't change the staff.
Sure.
Same people, different mentality, different leadership style, showing them how to do it.
Yeah.
It picked them up. And in very short time too, it didn't take me a couple years. The one branch, I mean, in one quarter, in a three months, we were crushing our goals. And they were like, Scott, nobody showed this to us. We didn't know. They threw us on the floor and they said, hit these numbers. No coaching, no development, no leadership, no nothing. Right. And all it took for me was to put myself out there and lead from the front and show them how to do it. And they picked up really fast and we ended up doing very well.
That's a fantastic story, man. Fantastic. And I think another idea that came to mind when you were telling that is related to just overall making sure people are in a position to be successful. And I think oftentimes leaders, in addition to being just negative or whatever, and it sounds like that situation might have been just a really bad leadership situation. But, I feel like sometimes we get frustrated with people like, hey man, this person's just not delivering on this. Like, I need to get rid of this person. It's like, no, man, you might have him in the wrong seat. Like, you got to put him in a position or her in a position to be successful. And if they have certain skills and you're putting them in a place where they're pretty weak and you're expecting them to deliver like high results in a place where they're weak, well, that's stupid. Like you got to put them in a spot where they can succeed.
Absolutely.
Right? Like that's your job. And you got to, the solution's not just get rid of people.
No. And I tell you, I have a quick story that you're reminding me of. I had an assistant named Paul, and Paul operationally was the best. My operation knowledge, I was horrible. I'm very type A, like those little details. It's not my thing. Right. So, but he was my assistant. So guess what? I handled the sales stuff. He handled the operations because I was comfortable enough to say, listen, Paul, that's not my thing. I need you to take that over. I'll handle this. And together this ship's going to run. Right. And it did. And I took care of him, for the help and all that, because, he took that completely off my plate, but that was his strong suit. His strong suit wasn't sales. Right. It was operations, which as far as the bank was concerned, operations was just as important as sales, right? I mean, there's guidelines that we got to follow, right? Sure. And it's not that I didn't know them, but there's just, and if you meet any operations person in a bank, they'll tell you there's just a lot of audit stuff, and it's a lot. That wasn't me. I was not very good at that stuff, but I recognized that, and I was humble enough to say, listen, I'm not good at this, Paul. Take that off my hands. I'll take care of the rest. And he did. And we did. We went to the top. We went to the top of our respected region because of it. And he had a part of it just as much as I did. That's awesome. He just handled my weakness and I handled his weakness.
That's awesome.
And we together as a team, we did very well, so I agree with you, and there's also been people where I've had to pull them aside to have tough conversations like, hey,
sure,
are you sure this is the right job for you? Like, you're really good at this. I can get you to the straight operation side where you're not in a branch. You're basically handling the corporate side of operations. You're very good at this. The rest of this stuff, you're not like, are you sure this is good for you?
Yeah. That's what good leaders do, man. They set the vision and they don't just sit there like, what do you want to do? What is this? No, they help people expand their vision for what they're capable of and what's possible and where they can add value. And I love that you did that. It's an awesome story, Scott. I love that we're going a little overtime, but it's worthwhile because I love chatting to you. We can go all night, but before we leave, want to ask you one final question. Sure. What would you leave? And this question, before I get into it, is I ask it to just about everybody. This podcast might be around for, who knows how long, right? I would love to be able to go back in time and see my great-great-grandpa talking with people on a podcast. Like, that would be super cool. And that was part of the why behind creating GLE. So if you could leave the future generations of who knows how many people that might see this podcast someday some bits of advice, what would you leave them?
Oh, wow. I could go over a lot of things, but watching your podcast as much as I have, I've heard the answer to some of these. So in an effort to not be redundant, be true to yourself and all that stuff, that's great, but if I were to add to the collection of advice that you have for this podcast, if you're in a leadership position, make sure you treat your workforce the way you'd want to be treated. Don't lead with fear. Lead by example. Be the guy that's out ahead of your workforce, showing them how to do it. You were put in a leadership position for a reason, right? Somebody saw something in you to put you in charge of these folks. Prove it. Prove that you can do the job. Prove to your sales force that you belong there, and they'll respect the hell out of you if you do, when you show them that you can lead them to do bigger and better things. And the ancillary benefits from it are like the respect that you'll get. They'll come to work wanting to work harder for you. It's just, people are human. Everybody's human. Positive reinforcement and teaching, as opposed to leading with fear, the benefits far outweigh the negatives when it comes to leading with positive reinforcement and treating your workforce, who, by the way, are that directly affect your bottom line, right? So, if you're just one that just wants to fire somebody all the time, you're going to find yourself job hopping for quite some time. And I've seen it. I've seen it in the bank. So treat people with respect, show them the way, lead from the front. Always be an earpiece for them too. Let them come to you and talk about whatever they want to get off their chest. You want to gain as much respect as possible, and respect doesn't have to come in the form of just having the management title, the CEO title. Show them that you care. Show them that you truly care, because if you don't, they're eventually going to see it and they'll stop wanting to work for you.
It's great advice, man. Great advice. Got to make them a priority. Absolutely. Give them time, give them attention, give them love, and give them courage and confidence to go do big things. So I love it, Scott. This has been fun, man. Where can people find you if they're looking to connect with you?
So the firm's website is www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's MG as in managementgroup.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Our insurance website's being revamped right now, so that'll be launched hopefully in the next few weeks. A lot of changes being made, but you can email me too at ssomma@affinityip as in insurancepartners.com. Again, all my contact information is on LinkedIn. So if you need to get a hold of me, that's where you can find me.
Rock on, brother. I appreciate you coming on. Everybody out there, make sure you're leading from the front and go lead everything.